Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Once Upon a Time. Another great episode. In this episode, focuses heavily on Weaver slash Rumple because it deals, obviously the entire episode's actually called The Guardian, and it deals with the Guardian. In the past, we have him find, he knows Alice is potentially the one because Dr. Facilier tried to come and take the dagger from him and failed miserably. He just poked the little, doll, and it's just like, Rumple's like, what are you doing? You literally thought you coming to me with that weak crap. It's like, dude, you look it's like, I feel so bad for him. Like, man, you look so stupid right now. You're just like, it's like, if it was really that easy to take down a Dark One, literally everyone that's ever stepped up against Rumple, yeah, they've kind of gotten some blows in here and there, but it's like ultimately everyone's walked away defeated. Who's ever come to try and take from Rumple what he has. So, but nevertheless, basically he wants to test Alice with the whole situation of trying to figure out whether or not she really is the Guardian or not. And it's kind of interesting. I guess there are a lot of potential Guardians, but I guess there can only be one Guardian at a time. But which is kind of interesting, like that they did that, because he ends up bringing up later on about Anastasia being a potential one. But I guess he saw that Alice basically was the Guardian kind of, but I guess maybe it's that situation of multiple people can be the Guardian at one time. It's like whoever kind of steps up to completely become the Guardian, I guess, is what happens. I don't know. But nevertheless. But in the past, obviously, Hook, isn't Superman. It's like, I know who you are, Crocodile. You might have everyone fooled, even the other me, but I know that you're still the evil person that you are. It is kind of interesting because he did bring up something, and it's kind of interesting how he manipulates Alice. It's kind of sad because, in his need to try and be reunited with Belle, especially because he kind of got let Facilier kind of get inside of his head. Because he's kind of like, Belle is saying that you kind of basically have to hurry, which is like, Belle would never kind of rush. Because it's like, I don't know. I think that was him just messing with Rumple's head of being like, Belle doesn't know if you'll actually do it in time before you completely become the Dark One again. Because without her around, that darkness is going to kind of potentially try and swallow you whole. You might not be able to fight it back without me. But it's like, I don't know if Belle would say something like that, because I think Belle would probably say something like, you will always be able to fight it back, because even though I'm not there with you, I will always be with you. We're always bound together. I thought, so I feel like that'd be what Belle said. I feel like Facilier was manipulating him, but for what purpose? It kind of screwed him over in the long run, but I don't know. Nevertheless. Basically, he got Alice to rip out Facilier's heart. Because I do forget that she does have magic. I was like, oh, wow, he made her... I was like, right, she actually has magic. I forgot about that. Is it me? His heart was different than Regina's, wasn't it? Maybe because his heart is a lot darker. I guess that speaks volumes in itself. Regina's heart's not completely clear. Hell, even Snow's heart isn't complete after the whole Cora situation. But even his, didn't his kind of have, this, little white shimmer around it? What was that? Or did they just aesthetically change what hearts look like in this season? Has that come up? That hasn't even come up yet this season, has it? Taking someone's heart? Well, didn't Gisela take Henry's earlier this season? I don't remember. Maybe it's just Facilier's heart himself. Maybe his just looks like that. Maybe because it is so dark and I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I'm actually blanking because I was like, I paid a little attention, but I feel like I didn't pay enough attention. It definitely just seemed different than other hearts, but maybe that's just, I don't know, maybe I'm remembering that wrong. But the fact is, you had Rumple being like, oh yeah, Facilier has the means to cure your dad and everything. Basically, all of it being a test and be like, you can crush his heart. And I love that he starts turning more and more into the Dark One, because the way he talks, he's just like, with a little squeeze. And you can hear just you don't need just one little finger, and then I can help you squeeze the rest of the way. And it's like, I was like, don't do this, Rumple. That's messed up. Especially because he manipulated her with the whole thought that Facilier in some shape or form has a means to heal your dad or whatever. But I guess ultimately, he told her the truth, explained everything, what it was all about. And I guess Alice forgave him because it's because she herself would do anything to be reunited with her dad. So she knows what it's like to be away from someone that you care about and love, So, and I loved her whole thought process about like she doesn't know what the afterlife is like, the place that Belle is at, but she's like, I hope it's somewhere that you can be with the people you love forever. You don't have to worry about something just like living. You can just be with them essentially. So, and Rumpel was this close. Like he gave the dagger to her. She sucked away all the darkness within, like all the Dark One's powers. But he couldn't go through with it because he wasn't, because it's like Tilly was finally free from the towers that she had been locked in for so long. There's always been one tower to another. Like, you know, that was something we, you know, went through in our story. Like, even like that comfort of the tower, like even when she thought she could escape, there was a small part of her that actually wanted to go back because it was a lot easier than being in like that, the world that wasn't familiar to her. And it's quite, you know, that whole thought process is sad. And as you see Rumpel thinking about it too, it's like the fact of the matter is giving her this will give her immortality and she would just be trapped in another tower. And it's like, because what that would also mean is that eventually down the road, she would literally be in the same situation as him. That basically the people that she loved, she'd have to watch them go. She'd eventually have to watch Hook go. She'd eventually have to watch Robin. I'm about to call her by her curse name. But she had to watch Robin as well as her dad go. And it's like, he wouldn't want that on anyone. He's literally barely handling that situation himself. The last thing he wants to do is pass it on to someone else. So he took the power back. And I was like, that's super sweet of him. Because he's like, the fact of the matter is he'll find another way. And even then, it's kind of interesting because we do see him kind of shift back into the Dark One. Which is kind of interesting. So that means like at some point in time before the curse was activated, he went to being back to being the Dark One. Like I'm sure he still struggled to try and be Rumpel still while probably like balancing, you know, his mind's probably like diving deeper into being, that's so, like, I just wasn't expecting him to actually kind of go back to looking green skin and everything, but it's like, I guess it's just the byproduct of not having Belle around, like the fact that the darkness is kind of trickling out and now it's kind of bubbled to the surface, so his literal battle between the light and darkness in him literally manifested itself as, you know, the Dark One's, the way he looks, so, which is kind of sad. But it was kind of interesting because you even had, because I was thinking about that too. I was like, right, you don't like him because for him, he's still the Rumpel. I'm talking about Hook. It's like, well, Nook, new Hook. It's like the fact of the matter is you still look at him as an arch enemy, not in the way OG Hook looked at him. But it's like, oh, it's so interesting because you and him are good partners now. I mean, you didn't start off that way, but you are now. But then it's like, he's like, okay, the fact of the matter is, how about this? You know, wait. Rumpelstiltskin and the pirate friends. He's like, yes, a new story. And it's like, huh. So that kind of fits to understand why they are where they are now. That no matter their past, like obviously that kind of fits in their curse because obviously they didn't start off with the best way, but now they've kind of become partners. They rely on each other and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting. And maybe that's why when Rumpel got his memories back, maybe that kind of clicked in his head to be like, well, no, I can rely on you more. You know, I can count on you, Hook. So, which is kind of sad. You see that kind of good ending, but then you flip the other side of the episode and it's the whole thing about Rumpel like spiraling because it's like he thinks Facilier has the dagger. He went to Ronnie first. But he wants to use that little bit of magic Ronnie has, but that magic she's built up is meant to save Henry. Because he's like, oh, your son can wait a little while. He's been fine up to this point. He's like, my son, don't forget that is your grandson. Like I said, it's so interesting because like it's something I've even brought up this season because it's kind of interesting because sometimes he treats Henry like a grandson, sometimes he does. That's kind of always been the series though. Because I feel like out of anyone he doesn't, I feel like there's still that, like he's close to Henry because Henry reminds him of Bellfire. And I think maybe because of also that, he does keep Henry at a distance. Because there isn't that personal connection between them. I always thought it was kind of interesting. I'm also surprised too, Gideon got brought up and he still hasn't popped up at all. I guess I wonder I would assume he was be affected by the curse, but to be fair, he's off on his own travels. So everyone that was in this kingdom, at this realm at that time is obviously underneath the curse. So he was off traveling. So obviously that's why he's not actually here. So I guess that makes sense why he hasn't like popped up or anything. So, but the sad thing is like with the whole Weaver situation, you do see him kind of start tilting towards that dark side, even pointing a gun at Facilier. But he's like, I know you won't pull the trigger. Once again, people being able to use that as a crutch of being like, oh yeah, because you don't want to be taken away from your Belle. Like this will take you steps away from being with Belle, so I don't have to worry about it. But it's like the next time you threaten me, like it won't go so nicely for you, you know. So what's kind of interesting, I wasn't like, he ended up telling her the truth. I thought he was lying about having a dagger. Turns out he wasn't. So I guess Regina can read him a little bit. He hasn't lied to Regina yet. He has been completely obvious. He's been completely upfront, because he's like, yeah, I've come here for the dagger. But not only that, he wants Regina too. Like, once again, like, maybe it's just because he kind of wants to have his own little happiness too. So maybe that's what that stems from. But he doesn't deny killing Nick. But I guess for that, Regina's like, well, you still suck for that, but it's okay. Because I guess it's like, well, Regina's killed quite a few people in her day. So it's like, that's not like she's really going to judge. Plus, it was Nick. He had her son too. So it's like, I don't, I'm sure that kind of leaves her a little conflicted. I think if Facilier is going to start doing that even more, like start tugging at the dark side of her, it's actually sad in the long run that it turns out that all of it was for nothing. And it's what kind of Regina brings up, because Tilly took the dagger herself. Obviously, she did it subconsciously. As the guardian, it's her duty to kind of protect the dagger. And so she knew Facilier was there. Meaning, he probably, after he killed Nick, he was going to take it, but it probably wouldn't do him any good. Maybe he didn't necessarily know it was there, but Tilly probably sensed that Facilier was in nearby, and his intentions to want the dagger. I mean, it might not have just been him either. Maybe it could have been like Gothel that she sensed coming after it too. So she tried to well, it might also be that the dagger just automatically found its way to her because it's the guardian. It's automatically drawn to her. I wonder if he had never put her in that position in the first place, would it be doing that? Like the fact is that she touched the dagger, that means like it's kind of drawn to her automatically. So maybe if he hadn't done that before, maybe this situation wouldn't be going down the way that, I don't know. It's just kind of sad, because usually it's like, oh, you kind of screw up a little in the past and you make up for it in the present underneath the curse. It's actually vice versa in this case. He did the right thing. Obviously, he went about it the wrong way, but he did the right thing in the past and he kind of screwed up now. Because it's like you're so selfish, It's kind of what, Regina gets at. And even he's beating himself up about it. He's like, because I was so caught up in my own mess, I ruined everything. Like, obviously, he says, like, I did what I got to do. But even he didn't buy that. Because for him, it's like, Regina has always kind of had like backed your plays on certain things. It's like, you couldn't just trust me to help you. You couldn't just do that. You couldn't rely on me. And it's like, now you've compromised Henry. The fact of the matter is, like, once again, my son, your grandson, this was an opportunity to save him and you didn't. She's like, I'm done with you. Which kind of leaves him even less allies, which is interesting, because I'm wondering what my thought is, that Regina is going to start working with Facilier because he's the only person she can trust, because he hasn't lied to her so far. He's been upfront and like, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do. And he's kind of kept to it. Did he have the dagger? No. That, once again, doesn't mean he didn't try to take it. The reason why Tilly tried to take, but still, like, in her mind, it's probably like, no, Rumpel, I can't trust him. He's so focused on his own mess that I think in the end, it's going to be him who's going to be the one that sacrifices himself for Henry. I think that might be ultimately what pushes him to be able to reunite. God, excuse me. Sorry. I think when it's all time, he'll probably absorb the curse. That might be what happens in the long run. That way, like, Henry is free of it. Maybe it's his way of making it up to Henry for messing this up for him and Regina, So, like I said, we still don't 100% know what Facilier has in mind for Regina. Like I said, maybe she is just a means to an end, or maybe legitimately he is in love with her and he is trying, like, she is kind of like one of the two things he came to the Heights for, So, I don't know. I mean, what does he plan to do once he gets the Dark One's dagger? I mean, Gothel, I'm sure it's all about resurrecting that witch that we saw that was in the globe, the reason why she wanted Robin. Like, I'm sure it's all about that for her, which is like, who is that lady to you? I mean, she's a powerful witch, and maybe it's like, oh, you're a powerful witch who helped bestow your powers upon me, which is like, she'll probably ultimately like betray you because it's like, oh, I'm powerful, I'm back, I got from you what I needed, I don't need you anymore. Typically how those, like, kind of like, oh, you do the hard work for me, you're no longer necessary. So she might do to Gothel what Gothel did to Drizella by like sucking away her magic and putting it in Anastasia. I don't know, but kind of along those same lines, we did see things kind of progress between Margot and Tilly, which was kind of nice. Their kind of first date, I thought that was kind of sweet. It's kind of interesting what they did with their characters too, because like obviously you have Tilly having like a small view of the world, hasn't really traveled, and then you have like Margot who has traveled, which is a complete opposite because Alice has done all the traveling when Robin really hasn't. I just thought that was kind of a nice little switch there. And also about like Alice saying like, oh yeah, like her small world kind of getting bigger, like this one spot in the library that she liked because she has access to so many different worlds. It's kind of interesting because she kind of takes a little after, like, because Belle kind of has that thing, had that thing too. Like, she was kind of, that's why she loved books so much, because was it Belle or was there someone else I'm thinking of? I know Belle definitely liked books, but I feel like someone else probably kind of had something like that too, where they like books because of all the different worlds. Like, I mean, I arguably could say the same thing's kind of for Henry too, because he's kind of, nevertheless. I do like that we do see them kind of growing closer, because that's also a thing that Rumpel wanted for her. It's like, that's what Hook wanted for her, and that's why Rumpel didn't let her fully embrace being a guardian, because I want you to have a normal life. You're in love, and I want you to kind of live and love that person that you love, and, you know, that person being Robin, so. And then finally, there's also the other side of the episode with Killian, because he brings Henry to the crime scene, because obviously after everything that Nick brought up, like, Henry's a little confused, go to his place and finds the DNA results. Also finds Drew, they end up finding Drew there, which is interesting, which then it's like, what are you doing there? Apparently Drew, which is kind of interesting because Drew's like, yeah, he killed Nick, and so he's like, who's to say I'm not next? Which is interesting considering the fact is Nick wasn't necessarily working with Facilier, he was taking advantage of what Nick was already doing, but it's also interesting too, because obviously because it is a police investigation, they haven't let anyone know. Henry is the first one to find out, which I'm sure he's not going to tell Jacinda or Lucy, because that's kind of messed up to tell them that about the whole Nick situation. But nevertheless, for Drew, it's like he thought Nick had something on Facilier. That's why he killed him. And it's like, I need something, anything I can, because obviously he's in that situation where he's kind of bound to Facilier until like Facilier is like, oh, you're done. You don't owe me anything anymore. He's kind of in his debt. So he's trying to find a loophole himself. So, and basically explains like the fact of the matter is he's like, run the autopsy. Then you're going to see that things aren't normal with this Facilier dude. With Samdi. The fact of the matter is, like, he's more powerful than you think. You, in ways you won't even believe me if I told you. Which, Killian runs the autopsy and it's like, yeah, it looks like he got stabbed by something from the inside. It was one stab to his heart. It's like, how is that possible? I don't know. And now that starts making Henry think about, well, a lot of stuff is impossible. So he goes to Jacinda and explains to her like what he was kind of hiding from her. And it's like, Nick showed me this. I went to the hospital. They confirmed it. It's real. Lucy was right. I am her dad. And even Jacinda's like, wait, what? How is this? So it's like, if Lucy was right about that, the question then becomes like, well, then is she like, did she only, like, is it like, oh, she's a little, you know, because obviously they think she's a kid. She believes in all this fairy tale stuff. But it's like, I think we're obviously closing into the end of the season, but it's like, we are etching towards them believing, because it's like, if she was right about this, but how? It's like, I've never met you before. Like, I've never met you either. Like, the first time I met you is when I came to the Heights. I know. So it's like, but Nick, I have really these memories of Nick being her dad. It's like, wait, what? What's going on? So it's already tiptoeing there for them. And then the more they remember, because obviously Killian is starting to kind of get in that direction too, especially with what Drew is kind of setting him up on that path to kind of figure out there is more to this than meets the eye. So I'm very curious to see where everything takes them going forward. I mean, that's because that means also Regina's running out of time, because the closer they become to remembering, the closer they come to kind of just breaking the curse, because it might not even just be like needing to necessarily, I mean, I feel like they would have to kiss to remember, but maybe they'll kind of get the feeling like that if it's like, wait, if we do true love's kiss, maybe we will remember, maybe everything will like, maybe Lucy wasn't I don't know. I'm just curious to see like 100% like what the reactions are going to be in the next episode with all this kind of continuing. It does seem like Gothel is coming back to the story, because I mean, Nick is kind of taken out of the picture, so she's kind of going unimpeded. I mean, to be fair, Facilier is still there, so we got two major bad guys, Gothel and Facilier. And that's kind of like something I was thinking about too, the whole situation around what Rumpel was doing. It's like, oh, you're doing a Gothel thing, which is sad, because it's like you're manipulating Alice, which is like, she was just kind of a pawn in all of like, you know, manipulation and pawn in her game, including Hook, like all she ever did to the girl that is her daughter. And it's like, that still blows my mind that that's her mom, to think about it. Like, she's just terrible. Like, I'm just so curious to see what goes down now. I mean, they did lose some members, so I wonder if she's going to find people to replace them, or is it? I don't know. It's going to be hard to get what she wants, but I'm sure Gothel being who she is, the manipulator that she is, she'll find a way. But to be fair, in retrospect, I'm like, well, to be fair, like, he's kind of been doing this whole manipulation thing a lot longer than even Gothel has. Like, he's been doing it a very long time. Which I'm curious to find out Gothel's story, because we still haven't really found out what that whole deal is, like exactly like where she's a villain. We haven't really gotten to see how she got to where she is. Same thing for Facilier, like what circumstances led them to be where they are. I'm also curious to see about the whole Drew situation too, once Sabine finds out the truth, like what happens there, especially like I said, because that's a complicated situation, because it seems like Drew kind of likes Sabine kind of likes Drew, I mean, but more like Naveen and Tatiana, not Tatiana, Tiana, like each other, but it also seemed like there might be like a Killian and Tiana situation too. I don't know. Nevertheless, like I said, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good